Now, good morning to you, Mr. Paterson. Thank you very much for coming on Breakfast this morning. In response to what Jeremy Hunt was saying there, for Brexit to work, everyone has to back the Prime Minister. Why are you not getting in line?
Oh, absolutely. Jeremy's completely right to back the Prime Minister, because the alternative is some crazy Corbyn government. I was in the Chamber, the statement last week. I asked the Labour Party spokesman what is their definition of leaving the European Union, and the Labour Party spokesman couldn't give me an answer. So absolutely, we're right behind the Prime Minister.
Well,
the purpose of this letter
issue, you're not right behind the Prime Minister, really.
Reinforce.
Because I'm sorry to jump in, but you signed this letter, which was published yesterday, which demands that the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice ends in March 2019. Now, Theresa May and David Davis have both made it very clear that that won't happen. So you're not really getting behind the Prime Minister, are you?
No, this is all in a state of flux. She's made a very generous offer at Florence, which the European Union were pretty churlish about and didn't come back and appeared to want just yet more money for more indefinite promises. All we're doing are restating what we had in the Conservative Party manifesto, which was the promise to deliver what the 17.4 million people voted for, which is to leave the single market, leave the customs union, and very importantly, leave the ECJ. Because if we ultimately have a court outside the jurisdiction of this country, where we can't appoint the judges, where we don't even have an appointee, we won't properly have left. And I think it's important to remind those with whom she's negotiating that she has very strong support for her clearly stated aims in the Florence speech. So we're absolutely right behind her. And it's very important that the European Union does understand that many of us are getting absolutely fed up with the fact that they're treating her in some ways pretty rudely and churlishly, and not getting on to the absolute key negotiation, which is the economic relationship which we have with the European Union once we leave. Now, many of us, most people, would like to see reciprocal free trade with zero tariffs, and that would enable their very significant trade with us. Don't forget they had a 71.8 billion surplus with us last year. There are 5 million Europeans who depend on exports to the UK for their jobs, and I think at last the economic penny is beginning to drop. If you go on my Twitter, I tweeted an article in Die Welt yesterday from a very reputable, distinguished research institute in Munich, pointing out that if Brexit goes ahead on WTO lines, that'll cost the EU about 44 billion a year. So I really hope at last they will wake up to that. We want to get on to negotiating a sensible free trade arrangement when we leave.
I understand that, but the UK has been in the EU for decades. Now we know that we are leaving. The Prime Minister is negotiating that position. Why are you trying to rush these things through for the sake of 24 months? If it's going to happen, why are you putting so much pressure on it for it to happen at a certain date, at a certain time, with regards to the European Court of Justice and other issues?
Well, we won't truly have left until we leave these three main elements, the single market, the customs union and the court. And we can't enjoy all the benefits of having left. And no one is talking yet enough about the huge opportunities in the wider world. As we see our trade with Europe fall, we've gone down from 61% of our trade in 1999. It's about 43, 44% now. It's going to fall down to 35%. So our neighbours are valuable, but the real growth in our trade is going to be the wider world. We can't get on and grab the opportunities of doing trade deals around the world with growing economies in Asia and elsewhere in the Anglosphere unless we have truly left. And don't forget, all those countries are watching us very carefully now. So if we come up with some muddled transition in which we're half in and half out and we can't negotiate and we can't do trade deals, that means we can't really enjoy the benefits and grab all those job opportunities and enrich this country and make people better off and bring their food prices down. We can't do all that sort of stuff until we got proper control of our country. And don't forget, the simple slogan of the referendum was, we want to take back control. And once we've taken back control, we can really enjoy those advantages.
Mr. Paterson,
there are real positives.
I want to ask you about Ireland, but one more on this sort of backing the Prime Minister. If Jeremy Hunt, when he said those words about everyone needs to back the Prime Minister, if he wasn't talking about you and others, who was he talking about?
Well, I'm telling you, I didn't see the interview. But I
can tell you what he said. He said everyone has to back the Prime Minister, otherwise Brexit might not work.
Well, OK, but you're trying to make a sort of techie inside Conservative Party story. I'm fully behind the Prime Minister today, and I wish her all the very best. She made a strong speech in Florence. She was very generous to the Europeans. I think they've treated her in a pretty churlish manner. And what we're doing in this statement, which is a group of senior politicians and businessmen with very extensive, wide coverage across the country, we are making it very clear we're right behind her. And what we're saying is, you know, really make it clear to them that we will not hand a penny over until we have absolute clear confirmation that, in principle, they will be moving to a proper free trade deal with zero tariffs in 2019.
Can I ask you one on the Irish situation as well? I mean, there's a deal on divorce, there's a deal on citizenship. What will the Irish border look like? Because there seems to be conflicting reports this morning about how well those negotiations have gone overnight. Well, I'm not obviously au fait with the exact details. I mean, I'm generally dismayed by the importance being given to this, because I really think this is soluble. There is a border today. There is a currency border, there is an excise duty border, there is a tax border. I first went to Northern Ireland on a regular basis 10 years ago as the Shadow Secretary. I went every week, and I went the real Secretary of State further 2 years every week, and I still go on a regular basis. Nobody, north or south of the border, has ever said that this presents a problem to their businesses, and no politician's ever mentioned it. And if you look at it, the vast amount of trade is local. It's 5% of Northern Ireland's trade. It's 1.6% of the Republic of Ireland's exports. So it's very much local trade. And the government put forward some very sensible practical solutions to this, derogation for small businesses crossing the border every day. There are concepts like authorised economic operators that could handle much of the agricultural produce, such as milk, which goes from the same farmer, in the same tanker, on the same road, every time at the same time of day, to the same dairy. That can easily be done with electronic invoicing. And modern techniques, such as I've talked about, trusted trader, authorised economic operator, this is very soluble. And this really should not be holding up the vastly more important talks, which is the end destination, which is, will we establish reciprocal free trade with zero tariffs with the European Union from the 30th of March 2019? Owen Paterson, thank you for your time this morning.